If you start typing, should I get into YouTube, the first thing you're going to see is, should I get back with my ex? The second is, should you get an Apple Watch? You can really see what the priorities of YouTube are today. And then the third one, if you go down that drop-down list, is, should I get married? Perhaps one of the best questions of the three. And if you go ahead and click that, you might be surprised by some of the videos that you see. And one of the first that I came across was why men should never get married. Let's take a look at it.
Here's why I will never get married as a man. Growing up, you're always taught that relationships eventually lead to a point of a union, of a marriage where you sign a government contract binding you two together. But the issue with marriages is the fact that nearly 50% of them end in divorce. Alongside with that, women and people really don't even know what a marriage means. Most women just want the validation of being called a wife, the ring, and of course, the wedding. In order to have a long-term relationship, you really don't have to get the government involved. You can do everything that a marriage actually entails without signing a government contract. That includes getting a ring, having a wedding, maybe even doing a honeymoon, changing her last name, having kids together, living together. You can all do this while being married without being technically married through a contract. Now, if you are gonna get married, at least to some degree protect yourself as a man. This includes getting a prenup before you decide to sign the papers. Otherwise, you're just gonna end up being another statistic and then complaining about how all women are the same.
I mean, when I saw this, I was expecting people to agree. It makes sense. YouTube is predominantly men, but the comments actually surprised me. Let's go for a few of those. He speaks facts about this matter, TBH. Marriage equals 50% of losing half of your assets. Single equals 0% chance of losing half of your assets. Single also equals 0% chance of actually having a long, fulfilling partnership. But I digress. And this one surprised me the most because it's from a female. Reasons not to get married. 1, you'll lose your freedom. 2, your sanity. 3, your money. 4, marriage will drain the hell out of you. Someone had a bad experience. So after this, I did what any normal human on social media would do. I swiped up to see the next video, and here's what I found.
Why would I get married? Why? Yeah. There's no actual reason to get married. It can complicate things. I have some friends that just have a woman they love and they had kids and they just didn't get married. I find them happier than those that get married.
There's something about it. I don't know what it is, but I feel like once you put the marriage title on it, there's just this like added pressure too, right? That like the relationship doesn't need.
Did you hear about this new food that like completely destroys sex-driving women?
No.
Wedding cake.
I'll be honest, the joke was quite funny, but the rest of the content, especially as a young man who's just got married, I completely disagree. So let's actually break down some of the things that they said in the video and see if they're genuinely true or not. So the first thing he said is that he's got a bunch of friends who are not married, they're just together, they have kids, and they seem to be happier than the friends who are actually married, which in his world and in his circle could actually be the case. However, this is very subjective, and also what your friends tell you to your face and what happens behind closed doors are also two different things. So let's check what the research says about this. So based on a study measuring well-being, which you can see on the screen now, with an enormous test subject of 800,000, almost 800,000 Americans, this does not seem to be the case, and it doesn't even seem to be close. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, maybe many of those participants were women. Of course, they get the better end of the bargain, so they are ultimately going to be happier. So I did a little bit of further digging to check out some statistics that are purely around men. So check out this study that was done on almost 128,000 men that clearly says that married men are much healthier than those who never married. It also says that men with spouses are far likely to live longer than those that don't have them. And finally, the longer a man stays married, the greater chance he has of survival over his unmarried peers. So this might be the case in the circle of this guy who made that YouTube short. However, it doesn't seem to be backed up by the research. And I think it was really interesting to see not only married couples at the top, but the next one was the domestic partnership. So those are the people who are together, but they aren't married. And they're not actually too far away from people who are divorced. So really, what does that tell us? And let's go on to the next point, and that is regarding pressure. And you might have actually seen my face when I first heard this. I do not need any data for this one, and I can't speak on behalf of every single married man out there, but I get a feeling that I'm going to be speaking on behalf of a lot of them here when I say that the pressure that comes with marriage is actually something that is a privilege. The chance to be a protector, a provider, the head of your family is something that I embrace, I love, and I enjoy. And I would imagine that a lot of other men feel the same. This is actually an advantage of marriage. So to actually hear men or males talking about this, I personally think it's just a little bit weak. Really, that pressure should be an inspiration. And I'm not saying it's easy by any means, but what happens when you're under pressure and you step up your game? You grow, the people around you grow, and your circumstances tend to improve dramatically. I can't see this as a disadvantage in any way. And actually, a guy in the comment section fortunately agreed with me. He said, that pressure is called responsibility and commitment. Preach, brother. So let's get to the other video where I actually feel that this guy made a few valid points. The first being that half of marriages do end in divorce, and I get this, I really, really do. But we also have to recognize that as a society, we are becoming more conscious. We are now going to therapy to sort out our messy childhoods. We are able to identify what we did not like about the relationships that we witnessed as we were growing up, and we also have a lot more choice, which of course presents its own challenges in itself. However, it means that we don't have to settle with the person that we could only meet in this small town of 200. I believe that in time, this is actually going to make an enormous difference to this stat. I guarantee that an enormous amount, that 50%, are boomers, or they're millennials who were parented by these broken boomers. I'm personally on the edge of being a millennial. A couple of years later, I would have been a Gen Zer, but even I feel more conscious than people who are 5, 6, 7 years older than me. I've gone to therapy. I've actively chosen and consciously chosen the relationship that I am currently in. And I trust that people my age and even younger are going to make much more conscious choices about the partners that they're choosing, and that is going to impact the rate of divorce in the future. So the stats don't look very good right now, but let's see where they are in 10 to 20 years. His next point is that women and people, I believe he said, don't really know what marriage is. And I feel that that comes back to the next point. Hopefully, we are becoming more conscious as the generations continue. Fingers crossed at least. So I trust that they're going to be more educated, more aware, and they're also probably going to have plenty of examples of what they don't want, and therefore hopefully make better choices. So the next point he made is that you can do everything that a marriage entails without having the government marriage per se. And as much as that makes sense, referring to the stats of well-being and fulfillment earlier, we saw that domestic partnerships rank lower and very close to divorce compared to married couples. So I'd say it's a little bit invalid when you look at it from that perspective. So within the nonsense, there are some relatively valid points there. However, the challenge that I have is that they are painting the picture of marriage to be super negative. They have a really, really pessimistic take on it. And these guys are young, relatively successful looking dudes. And the challenge is that young teenage boys who are impressionable and young adult men are going to be watching this, and they are going to be absorbing everything that they say. And this is not helpful for the next generation of men. On the other hand, there are some great videos on the advantage of getting married as a man from people like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson, who I admire and I appreciate their wisdom. However, I just feel like it might be a little bit lost on Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Who do you think they're going to listen to? The young, cool-looking dude in his 20s or his 30s, or the 62-year-old psychologist that reminds them of their granddad? Which sucks, and which is why I wanted to create this video as a recently married man and recreate some of that optimism. Check out this amazing video that Ben Shapiro actually put up on the advantages of marriage.
People aren't getting married at an age where they actually are able to grow up with one another because your wife shapes you and you shape her, and that makes you both better people. When I married my wife, I just turned 24 and she was 20. We've spent our lives growing up together, right? I mean, now I'm 38 and she's, 35, and that's a long time to spend, half her life, basically we've spent together. And that means that you grow and you change and you have experiences, and then you bring kids into the world, and that radically changes you even more than just the marriage.
That point about being able to shape each other is absolutely amazing. As realistically, if you're marrying someone, it's because you value them as a person. You value their character, their opinions, their perspective, the values that they have about the world and what they see around them. And therefore, if you create a union with this person and help shape each other, especially while you're still valuable, what a beautiful way to grow. And speaking of, here's another amazing video, and this time from Jordan Peterson.
I've had clients in my practice who are living together, and when I ask them why they don't get married, the man often will say, well, we don't need a piece of paper to signify our commitment. And I think, first, I've heard that 20 times, and you might think that's a philosophy, but it's actually a pretty stunningly shallow cliche. And second, we're not talking about a piece of paper here. We're actually talking about something serious. You stand up in front of your family, your peers, your friends, the people that love you, the people that you want to spend time with, hypothetically, for the rest of your life, that you're going to depend on, that are going to depend on you. And you say, look, this is important. I want you to recognize it. We're now one thing. We're going to give it our best shot. And it would be nice if you support us. And that's not trivial. It's vital.
This is not something you will understand until you go through it. I'll be honest, when I proposed, I thought it was an enormous deal. And at the time it was the furthest step that I had ever taken with a woman. So it was an enormous step. However, now that we're married and I look back and think, well, if we were facing any adversity, or if one day I woke up and I just wasn't feeling the relationship anymore, I could have walked away. When you're married, that changes. My family flew over from the UK to Mexico to watch us get married. They saw me stand up at the front with a microphone and say all the vows and all the commitments that I was going to make. They also saw me sign that piece of paper. This is a big deal. This is not trivial at all, which is one of the many reasons why I'm pro-marriage. And you might go down that domestic partnership route, but I'm telling you, it does not feel the same way that a marriage does. You're making a very conscious choice through this act. You're telling them that you're committed. You're ready to commit to build something. You're telling them that out of everyone in the world, I am choosing you. I am prepared to create a family with you. And for me, there isn't anything bigger than that. And one final caveat is so many people in the comment section on Twitter, on Instagram will say things like, well, this makes sense if you're a Christian or you're Catholic or you're in some form religious. I am not any of those. I am not religious, and yet I still believe in this concept. So if you're a young man or even a young lady listening right now, there is still a lot of value and merit to marriage. So I definitely consider just looking at both sides of the coin before making your final choice. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and you can be one of the special ones who can say, I was here first. Comment your thoughts down below, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.